the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for November 5th. Well, here we are with two systems now active on the 5th day of the month. Tropical Storm Wanda, which is peaking in terms of latitude for now as it begins its second U-turn, while Tropical Depression 18E formed earlier today in the eastern Pacific, far east compared to what you would typically expect for a formation area of a tropical depression. In the Atlantic, it's day 157 of the season, and there is Wanda, which actually weakened today, despite forecasts saying otherwise. It is expected to strengthen as it turns back southwards before turning extratropical and potentially impacting the UK and Ireland. In the eastern Pacific, there is Tropical Depression 18E, which is expected to become a tropical storm in the coming days. There's also Invest 94E now, with a 50% chance of becoming a short-lived tropical system as well. So pretty active for early November for sure. In the western Pacific, Invest 91W was designated for some reason, but there is virtually 0% chance of that becoming anything, as there is no model support and the conditions for it look pretty pitiful, so no development is expected out of this one. In the North Indian Ocean, we have ourselves a new area of interest, which is actually already invested. Invest 90A, which has a 20% chance of formation as it heads northwards. There's also some ensemble signatures hinting at something in the Bay of Bengal too, so we could be seeing some activity returning here. But in the meantime, there is Tropical Storm Wanda on the map there, winds of 45 miles an hour and a pressure of 994 millibars as of the latest NHC advisory. It is expected to start turning south before turning back to the northeast and accelerating rapidly as it turns extratropical, getting pretty close to Ireland and then eventually the United Kingdom as well. So those two areas we'll have to watch for Wanda as it draws closer. Looking at the Atlantic satellite imagery, you can see Wanda there as it continues to pull itself northwards, although that northward jog is now coming to an end as it begins that 180-degree turn towards the south again. And then of course we can see those little storm disturbances off the mid-Atlantic and Florida coast. In the eastern Pacific, you can see what's going on here. It's kind of hard to make out 18E given the fact it's to the right and you'll have to go back to the Atlantic satellite imagery, but you can see 94E there, which isn't looking too bad in terms of getting itself showering in storm activity. In the western Pacific, you can see 91W there in the Philippines, looking not so great as an invest, pretty much just your average cluster of showers and thunderstorms. So I'm pretty surprised that it actually did get designated as a invest, because it does not really look any likely that this is going to be developing into anything in the slightest, which is definitely a good thing. We know it's November and we typically see some of the worst storms at this time of year anyways. In the North Indian Ocean, you can see 90A in the Arabian Sea, looking pretty interesting. I did note it last night as that area of showers and storms, considering the fact that we've been watching the Arabian Sea be relatively dry. That's no longer really the case at the moment. And then of course you can see Wanda, which really lost its eye-like feature that it had there. It's been struggling a little bit, but it is expected to enter a little bit more of a favorable environment, which should help it strengthen once more. And at those sea surface temperatures, the eastern Pacific has around 27 to 28 degrees Celsius temperatures throughout the majority of the basin. Those areas where the 29s were have pretty much decreased substantially. In the Gulf of Mexico, the temperatures are continuing to cool. At the Caribbean Sea, it is slowly cooling. Same thing with the main development region. Temperatures there are around 27 to 28 degrees Celsius. Where Wanda is currently, it's around 20 to 22 there. So some pretty good temperatures that are relatively cool, although it is expected to enter some slightly warmer ones soon. In the Bay of Bengal, the temperatures are around 27 to 28, with some areas near 30, as you had southeast of Bangladesh there, and in the Arabian Sea, it's around 27 to 28. As you head into the western Pacific, you can see what it looks like here, around 27 to 29 throughout much of the basin, with much of those 30 degrees Celsius temperatures being near the equator. Southern hemisphere is still slowly warming as we head into the closer part of the beginning of the season there. So we should be seeing some activity wake up eventually there. In terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies, the Atlantic is looking above average pretty much everywhere. In the Eastern Pacific, it's looking pretty spotty, especially as you head westwards. Central Pacific looking below average primarily. Western Pacific and North Indian Ocean, of course, looking slightly above average. But needless to say that La Nina is still continuing to progress as a weak one at that. 30 years ago on this day, we had Tropical Storm Thelma in the Philippines at this point. Unfortunately, Thelma would go on to kill 5,000 plus people. Despite its intensity as a tropical storm, which is just an overall reminder, it doesn't matter what category a system is, you really need to be taking it seriously because of impacts such as these. 5,000 is a very and it's not something to be forgotten for sure in terms of Filipino history. Of course, you can find more of our On This Day products powered by Cyclone History. Their tag is on the bottom bar below. Well, that brings us over to the next names. In the Atlantic, of course, we're out, which brings us to the first two names in the auxiliary list, which is Adria and Braylon. In the Eastern Pacific, we're looking out for Sandra and Terry. And in the Central Pacific, while Chris Pratt may be voicing everything, we won't be seeing Chris Pratt voice Hone as it doesn't exist. In the Western Pacific, the next two names here are Nieto, followed by Ray. And in the North Indian Ocean, the next two names here are Jawad, followed by Asani. Going on over into the Southern Hemisphere, the next two names in the Southwestern Indian Ocean are Anna, followed by Betsy Ray. The Australian region looking out for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, we're looking out for Cody. We'll be back for the Trouble Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.